Welcome back into Slick Talk. This is your host, Blackstone Joe. We are on episode 40. That seems like a big number. I don't know why. But then again, every time I record one of these, it feels awesome because it's a privilege. And I feel like I also just need to thank the listeners every time because not only are you coming back for more each, we do this bi-weekly, but you're also giving excellent feedback. You're contributing reviews and ratings. After the release of episode 39, I was on Apple Podcasts. I was scrolling through, picked up another 3 5-star reviews. We'd love to see it. We being myself, my co-producer Josh, and of course everyone else at Blackstone. The customer engagement, what we get back from you all, as far as topic suggestions, just feedback on how much you love the show, it all means a lot. So before I do a dive into the main event though, I have an announcement, and that is that in addition to Slick Talk swag, which you have already heard about, the hats, the shirts that you can find on the website, there is a new page that you can find under the products tab on blackstone-labs.com. It is called Blackstone Gear, where you're able to find hats, beanies, shop towels, even stickers. It's all on the website. You can order it right there. So if you're on blackstone-labs.com, you're getting your next oil analysis kit, you're browsing the Slick Talk swag. Don't forget, there's also Blackstone Gear available. All right, main event time. Topic of the day. What's making that noise? It's a question that many people have on their minds. Sometimes it's related to the car they're driving. Sometimes it's related to a problem with the house. The other day I was sitting in my living room and, trying to enjoy my evening programming, which is usually reruns of Mad Men. I'm a creature of habit. This time, though, I was sitting there trying to enjoy my latest Don Draper ad pitch when I heard a really frustrating, it sounded like a pin dropping. Something minor, small, but it was reoccurring. It was like clockwork, and I couldn't put my finger on it. So, I'd walk out to the kitchen, I would look around and see if there was anything amiss. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure it out. So I'd go sit back down, I'd watch a couple minutes of the show, and I'd hear this annoying drop sound. And it wasn't that classic, leaking faucet type deal. And I finally figured it out. And this is annoying, but it was literally the sound of my cat dropping food into the bowl because he's 1 year old. I have put him on social media in the how to assemble a kit video that I posted on our Instagram and Facebook page. His name's Cliff. He's small, and he tries to eat way more than he can in one go. So the food will fall out of his mouth. So anyway, the noise in this case was literally kibble that he could not quite chew dropping into the bowl, and he was doing it at such a consistent rate that every 2 minutes I would just hear a drop, and that was the sound. So what does that have to do with today's topic? Well, often folks will report on the slip. They're checking out their engine. Sometimes it's the transmission, but usually it's the engine, and they hear something going on and they want to figure it out. So it can be a problem. I could have had something going wrong in my kitchen. I could have had something, an issue with an appliance or a leaky faucet, or there are real life issues that can cause a noise. And then sometimes it's something purely incidental and it's not really a problem at all. Sometimes it's your cat literally biting off more kibble than they can chew. So a used oil analysis can be the key in determining whether the noise you're hearing is wear related. Is it due to a problem with oil sharing parts, or maybe it's due to something else entirely? So we're going to unpack a few different examples and lets you know what to look for, what we're looking for when you're trying to hunt down the source of a noise. So here's an obvious one. I think maybe you might have a few armchair mechanics out there. As soon as I started talking about engines making odd noises, this might be an example that dialed up for a lot of you. That would be a timing chain making contact with the case. It's pretty common for this issue to occur, at least in the realm of engines making noises. It's not unusual for that to be a timing chain issue. Sometimes the guides can disintegrate, break apart, and then you end up having the chain make contact with the case, and that's a noise that a lot of folks are familiar with. If you're hearing a knock, that can be a bearing problem. If you're hearing a tick, that can be a lifter problem. So let's start with the timing chain making contact with the case. So when this occurs, you have a timing chain, which those are made of steel. So the chain itself, if it's wearing against the case, that's going to generate iron. And then you'll get aluminum from the case itself. So a timing chain issue, typical hallmarks of that: iron from the chain, aluminum from the case. Aluminum and iron are, of course, two metals that we check for in a spectral exam. So when you send in a sample and you get your standard analysis, we can, of course, assess the aluminum and iron levels. Now, importantly, aluminum and iron can be from other sources too. You can get aluminum from pistons, you can get iron from really any steel part, cylinder liners, shafts, valve train components, the list goes on. So what we need to know here is what you're after, because then we can narrow it down for you, at least in a quicker manner. So if we see high aluminum and iron and you mention on the slip, hey, I'm hunting this noise down and I want to see, do we have the aluminum and iron that might indicate a timing chain issue, because I'm hearing what sounds like a rattle. I'm hearing that sound of what could be the chain in the case. Let us know and we will direct our attention to that possibility, instead of, trying to suss out other possible explanations like piston wear and iron coming from other steel parts. So let us know if you're hearing an unusual noise. That way we can direct you to the likely explanation for it. Now on to a bearing problem. So if you're hearing a knocking sound, that's pretty consistent with a bearing issue. If you have an engine with leaded bearings, then of course we'll be looking at lead, but there can be other metals too from a bearing problem: copper, tin. If a problem is so bad that it's causing a knock, then I wouldn't be surprised to find that excess copper and tin from the secondary layer. This is of course assuming that you have that tri-metal bearing metallurgy. Newer bearings, really pretty much any engine that I can really think of made in the last 10 years. Generally, we're going to be looking at aluminum bearings. There are exceptions to the rule, but generally, if I'm talking about a factory engine, no modifications, the newer they are, the more common it's going to be aluminum. So this is kind of a good time to attack a misconception, which is that we can't find a bearing problem if you have aluminum bearings. It's absolutely not true. That's another forum conclusion that folks have made out there. And it's common basically to hear someone say, well, I've been checking out the forums, I've been looking around, and as I understand it, you can't find a bearing problem if my bearings are aluminum, and that's just, it's not the case. I think what happens is some folks will also hear that the pistons can be aluminum as well, which they are, so they'll think, oh, well, you can't tell which is which. And yes, there can be more than one explanation for aluminum, but importantly, we look at aluminum in concert with the other metals. So if you have high aluminum and you do not have the excess chrome from rings, you don't have the excess iron that can be from cylinder liners, etc., we can give you the likely explanation. So bearing problem, hearing a knock, let us know if you're hearing that knock, and we'll let you know if we're seeing the hallmarks of a bearing problem. So another sound I would like to tackle here is ticking. Ticking is a pretty common one too. You can generally associate this with a lifter problem. So I talked earlier about iron being from anything steel, and that would include lifters. So if you're hearing what sounds like a lifter tick, then chances are good that if it were to be a wear-related issue, then we're going to find iron, excess iron, to go along with it. So let us know if you're hearing a tick, and we will evaluate where iron is. Sometimes you'll have a lifter tick that It will go away as the engine warms up, and we won't always find excess wear from that. So we certainly wouldn't describe this as something you should disregard or not do anything about. But if the noise is consistent and not coinciding with other issues, or this steadily worsening wear level in testing, or a high level period, it's not really something that I would say is immediate need for repairs or close inspection. Now, of course, not every noise that you're hearing is due to a problem. I opened up the show talking about an instance where a noise was just incidental, purely, and that can be true with vehicles as well. Here is an instance where a pretty awful noise had nothing to do with a problem involving oil sharing parts. I got in my buddy's Jeep, and when he started it, there was this pretty horrendous rattle. And this rattle would continue as the car ran. And it was consistent, so, we knew when it was coming, and it didn't really change, but it sounded like hell. I mean, this rattling noise seemed to indicate something was clearly wrong, but it wasn't anything to do with oil sharing parts. In fact, it was just a loose heat shield that needed to be replaced. And just so happened to coincide with awful noise at startup. At idle, it wouldn't sound very good. And sure, it's something that you would like to fix if you'd like the noise to go away, but it had nothing to do with the engine, the transmission, oil sharing parts. It was just an external component that needed to be replaced, at the driver's leisure. It wasn't something really to worry about. And external components it's something to keep in mind. Rule it out on your end. If you're hearing an unusual noise, I would first try and rule out external components. If you don't know what you're looking for, then of course a used oil sample can help confirm if it's wear related or not. But it's something to do if you know where to look, the possibilities. Sometimes that is the answer. Not an oil sharing part, but something independent of that entirely. I've also come across instances where there will be transmissions and folks will describe them as having a whining sound. I've even heard folks describe that of their engines as well. Again, it's not something to disregard, but if it's not coinciding with excess wear and it's something that is predictable, not getting worse, I wouldn't be one to assume that you need to look into expensive repairs, take corrective action. So if you have a problem that you suspect, or you are clearly noticing a worsening symptom on your end, the noise is not consistent, it's getting worse, be sure to describe this on the slip. Pretty much every topic, no matter what I cover on this show, it can almost always come back to filling out your paperwork, giving us the detail, letting us know what's going on your end. Not only will that guide our analysis, but we can also give a more informed recommendation moving forward. If we find the excess metal that can also be related to a noise mentioned on the slip, then we can kind of dial in the source. You can then proceed to heading to a shop or tackling the problem yourself if you're so inclined. That way, if we look at high wear, but we have no idea that you're hearing a noise, then we won't be left in the dark as to where to go from there. So if you're hearing an unusual noise, you want to know if it's wear related, just let us know and we'll guide you as far as what the metals are telling us, what looks like a potential problem. Is it bearing, lifter, something else? We will go ahead and tailor those recommendations so that way we get you going in the right direction as soon as possible. So this episode isn't all-encompassing as far as potential noises that engines, transmissions can make. The list is basically endless, and it's different for everyone as far as what they're hearing, what they think they're hearing, what they think that indicates. So if you have any noises that you're hearing and you want to know what the possible explanations are, don't hesitate to reach out. And if it's a problem that you're wondering if we can even pinpoint in testing, it never hurts to contact us with a phone call, an email before you go through the trouble of sending in a sample. That way you can find out, hey, is this something that Blackstone can help me with? And that way we can let you know right away and there will be no doubt as to whether or not we can help you. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out. You can either call us at 260-744-2380. If you have just a general question, you can email us bstone@blackstone-labs.com. However you want to reach out, we would love to get in touch with you and let you know what we can find, whether or not you have a problem that is worth sorting out with a used oil analysis. So that's all we have for today. Once again, thank you all for tuning in, leaving reviews, topic suggestions, reaching out in general. Don't hesitate to give us a follow on our Twitter, our Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. This is Blackstone Joe, signing off.